So, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Um, I'm here with Eugene Terekhin, and we've decided to pick up on our long lost series on fairy stories with J.R.R. Tolkien. So, we're going to dig in hopefully where we left off. We might be repetitive because we're not entirely sure where we left off,
Yes.
but it'll refresh all of our memories,
Yeah.
right?
Well, after all, C.S. Lewis once said that good taste in literature is when you go back to old books like
Yeah.
you go to old friends. So,
Yes, that
really,
that's excellent. Yeah, and I've actually been feeling like I need to do that recently. Like just read an old book that I really loved.
yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking of starting with Crime and Punishment because when I read Crime and Punishment the first time, had no idea who Dostoevsky was.
Mm.
All I knew it was that he was Russian. That was all I knew. And I went to like a in the community I lived in, we had a thing called um oh, what did they call it now? Here they call them share sheds. So you just have stuff you don't want anymore, but it's still good. So you put it in there and someone can take it.
Hmm.
And someone had put a bunch of Dostoevsky and Solzhenitsyn novels and books on the shelf. And it was coming winter and I thought, oh, you know, maybe I'll just read these.
Hmm.
But I didn't really, I mean, I knew they were Russian literature, but I didn't know anything about these guys. I knew something about Solzhenitsyn, but I didn't know anything about Dostoevsky. And Crime and Punishment felt like I was taken to another world. You know, like I can remember in my mind being in the guy's apartment. His landlady who was just old and crotchety. I can it's all it's in my mind. It's like emblazoned in there.
It is. It is. I had a friend who actually lived in that part of St. Petersburg, and we visited her actually. She's a Dutch lady, and because just the impression when you walk into the we call it podъезд, basically it's like the front door where you walk in and there's like a staircase that goes up, and then there are like floors with apartments there.
Hmm.
But because it's so, I mean, the buildings are so old, basically from that particular era, uh, you recognize exactly the feelings that he describes. Like it's
Yes.
damp, it's really cold, it's damp, and
Yeah.
okay, so the walls are scratched and the paint is kind of coming off, and even though it's been repainted so many times, so you
Yeah.
kind of plunge into the sort of the way it was, and you realize that
That's funny. I forgot about the damp cold, but when I was retelling and immediately I was there in my mind in the apartment, I could smell mold.
mold, maybe mold, yes.
Mold and must. So, yeah, somehow that damp, cold description stayed in my head.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we'll start off with the section on fantasy. Do you want to read?
Yeah, I'll try. Okay, so fantasy. The human mind is capable of forming mental images of things not actually present. The faculty of conceiving the images is or was naturally called imagination. But in recent times, in technical, not normal language, imagination has often been held to be something higher than the mere image making ascribed to the operations of fancy, a reduced and depreciatory form of the older word fantasy. An attempt is thus made to restrict, I should say, misapply imagination to the power of giving to ideal creations the inner consistency of reality. Ridiculous though it may be for one so ill instructed to have an opinion on this critical matter, I venture to think the verbal distinction philologically inappropriate, and the analysis inaccurate. The mental power of image making is one thing or aspect, and it should appropriately be called imagination. The perception of the image, the grasp of its implications, and the control which are necessary to a successful expression may vary in vividness and strength, but this is a difference of degree in imagination, not a difference in kind. The achievement of the expression which gives or seems to give the inner consistency of reality is indeed another thing or aspect needing another name. Art, the operative link between imagination and the final result, subcreation. For my present purpose, I require a word which shall embrace both the subcreative art in itself and a quality of strangeness and wonder in the expression derived from the image, a quality essential to fairy story. I suppose, therefore, to arrogate to myself the powers of Humpty Dumpty, and to use fantasy for this purpose, in a sense, that is, which combines with its older and higher use as an equivalent of imagination the derived notions of unreality, that is, of unlikeness to the primary world, of freedom from the domination of observed fact, in short, of the fantastic. I am thus not only aware but glad of the etymological and semantic connections of fantasy with fantastic, with images of things that are not only not actually present, but which are indeed not to be found in our primary world at all, or are generally believed not to be found there. But while admitting that, I do not assent to the depreciative tone, that the images are of things not in the primary world, if that indeed is possible, is a virtue, not a vice. Fantasy, in this sense, is, I think, not a lower but a higher form of art, indeed the most nearly pure form, and so, when achieved, the most potent. Fantasy, of course, starts out with with an advantage, arresting strangeness. But that advantage has been turned against it and has contributed to its disrepute. Many people dislike being arrested. They dislike any meddling with the primary world, or such small glimpses of it as are familiar to them. They therefore stupidly and even maliciously confound fantasy with dreaming, in which there is no art, and with mental disorders, in which there is not even control, with delusion and hallucination. But the error or malice engendered by disquiet and consequent dislike is not the only cause of this confusion. Fantasy is also an essential drawback. It's difficult to achieve. Fantasy may be, as I think, not less but more subcreative, but at any rate, it is found in practice that the inner consistency of reality is more difficult to produce, the more unlike are the things and the rearrangements of primary material to the actual arrangements of the primary world. It is easier to produce this kind of reality with more sober material. Fantasy, thus, too often remains undeveloped. It is and has been used frivolously, or only half seriously, or merely for decoration. It remains merely fanciful. Anyone inheriting the fantastic device of human language can say the green sun. Many can then imagine or picture it, but that is not enough, though it may already be a more potent thing than many a thumbnail sketch or transcript of life that receives literary praise.
Do we want to stop here for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Because he's going to go on to the secondary world, and this is about the primary world.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I thought at the beginning there when he says that it's a difference in degree in a difference of degree in imagination.
Mhm.
when he's talking about the mental power of image making is one thing, and it should appropriately be called imagination. The perception of the image, the grasp of its implications, and the control which are necessary to a successful expression may vary in vividness and strength, but this is a difference of degree in imagination. I thought that that was a really astute observation by him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making, it's becoming more and more clear to me now how much he makes one responsible for the use of their imagination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Well, for example, like to see, I forgot the exact wording that he used. To see all the implications of an image, right?
Yeah,
That is quite a responsibility.
it
Yeah,
is.
in my own understand, I mean, experience, because uh, like whatever you see, like you see a flower, um, uh, you are sort of, I mean, you in certain sense, you are responsible to look at that image and see all the like perceive all the implications of it.
Yeah,
Perception.
perception and grasping of implication and control to which are necessary to a successful expression. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you think of the expression, I'm always relating back to Lord of the Rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's writing and he has images because you're in that world, right? And those images, um, I mean, perception is just mystifying to me, um, because I think it has a lot to do with actual perspective, like where you're standing, what you know, how what angle you're looking at something.
Mm-hmm.
You perceive it differently, right? I mean, we just know that from looking at something from, a different angle. You know how you'll see the back of someone's head and think, "Oh, that's my friend Bob," and then
Mm-hmm.
you get around them and see the side of their face, and oh, and that's not him,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what perception feels like to me. So I think when a good storyteller like Tolkien is talking about perception, he's talking about being able to be on all sides of the, like, to see the thing from all the way around, which
Mm-hmm.
would be for me personally like an enormous task,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I'm thinking also about the George MacDonald here, and like remember in Fantastis, he says that the reason that flowers die, no, how does he put it? The fair the
You thinking?
fairies leave not because the flowers die. The fairies leave the flowers not because the flowers die, but it's because fairies leave that the flowers die.
Right,
So the flower is their home. So if they're not there, why retain, and maintain the home?
right.
And I was wondering, like, what I mean, what type of what kind of consciousness he had to be able to walk by, like a patch of flowers somewhere in the forest, stop and perceive that that is the case.
Right.
I believe it's a very responsible way of handling, of perceiving images.
Yeah.
And then because that's pretty much the poetic way to
Right.
do it. Because well, like I like to ride my bike in this park nearby, and there's like a ravine, and it's all like all kinds of flowers for months. And there's one particular flower. It's called something blanket. I forgot the name.
Yeah.
Blank. And I really have every time I go, I have to stop because it arrests again. It arrests me, my
Mhm.
imagination, whatever. And uh, the question that then follows is like, what are the implications of this image? Because I'm given a glimpse. This flower is like a glimpse, and then there's a narrative, a story, a fantasy world behind it.
Yeah.
And MacDonald did just that beautifully in
Yeah.
his little thing, whatever.
You know, in the book that I'm reading by, I'm not sure how to say his name. Is it Samon Frank? S.L. Frank, about the unknowable. One of the things, because he said he actually talks about strangeness, and I think that's also like that's what that arresting is, right?
Hmm.
He says fantasy starts out with an advantage, arresting strangeness. Well, Frank says that the unknowable is always accompanied with strangeness.
Hmm.
And and then Tolkien very beautifully expresses how most people don't like being arrested, right? It's almost a play on words, you know, like being
Yeah.
arrested by the police or whatever. But it's not the arresting that they don't like, it's the strangeness. It's the arresting strangeness. Because
Hmm.
now they're in the unknowable, right? Or the unknown, which is just, you know, in our human lizard brain, that's just danger.
Hmm.
So yeah, and like George MacDonald, like you said, you know, he's walking through a field of flowers, and instead of being in that strangeness, he, you know, instead of being afraid of the strangeness or the unknowable or the unknown, because there's something about all those heads, right? Like of flowers that you're seeing, the blanket that feels, I don't know. I don't know how it feels to you, but to me, it would feel like I was being observed.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can not like that feeling, or you can move into it, right? And then become a fairy tale writer like like George MacDonald.
Hmm. Hmm.
But one of the things I wanted to point out here is he has these. I'm starting to get his sarcastic way of speaking,
Yeah.
and he says, we're at the beginning. Fantasy for this purpose, in a sense, that is, which combines with its older and higher use as an equivalent of imagination, the derived notions of quote unquote unreality. So he doesn't, he's not really giving credence to that. He's calling it a notion or a derived notion of unreality, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's also a freedom from the domination of observed fact, right? So it's not just a field of flowers. It's a, you know, it's little people looking at you,
Hmm.
like fairies, for example.
Yeah.
Um, and he's glad of the etymological and semantic connection of fantasy with fantastic. So I just got the sense in this part of the thing, and also he has another phrase here where he says that, you know, these are generally not believed, or generally believed not to be found there. That the images are things not in the primary world, if that indeed is possible. So it's like he's shaking you a little awake to say, this is what you believe, but you're calling this your primary world, but really it's this other reality that is primary.
Hmm.
Do you get that sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I think at the beginning we kind of he's criticizing somebody. I forgot the name of the guy.
Lang.
Lang, Mr. Lang, yeah. And
Where
maybe
he's giving the lecture.
yeah. Maybe he's still kind of in dialogue with him and you know
Right.
allowing himself a little bit of sarcasm here or whatever. You know.
Yeah, and he's doing it in a very, you know, he's kind of circling. He's
Mm,
circling and circling and circling, I find.
mhm. Yeah, but at the end, I really like where he is. He hasn't really developed this idea of the green sun, but I think he's gonna go. As far as I remember reading it before. He's gonna go deeper into it and just explain that if we come up with this image of a green sun, it has to be internally consistent, and for fantasy to be good, we it has to be created in such a way that when we read it or watch the movie or whatever, we can't at any moment say it's not true. It has to be true and internally consistent. Like the green sun, there has to be an explanation that is, good enough. Not good enough, but it's just um, it explains.
Yeah, I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't. It does. There's no disconnect
mm,
between our primary world and the reality of a green sun.
yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Mhm.
Okay, so should we read on?
Yeah,
I'll read this part.
sure.
We'll take turns.
Hmm.
Okay. To make a secondary world inside which the green sun will be credible, commanding secondary belief, will probably require labor and thought, and will certainly demand a special skill, a kind of elvish craft.
Mm.
Few attempt such difficult tasks, but when they are attempted and in any degree accomplished, then we have a rare achievement of art. Indeed, narrative art, story making in its primary and most potent mode. In human art, fantasy is a thing best left to words, to true literature. In painting, for instance, the visible presentation of the fantastic image is technically too easy. The hand tends to outrun the mind, even to overthrow it. Silliness or morbidity are frequent results. It is a misfortune that drama, an art fundamentally distinct from literature, should so commonly be considered together with it, or as a branch of it. Among these misfortunes, we may reckon the depreciation of fantasy. For in part, at least, this depreciation is due to the natural desire of critics to cry up the forms of literature or imagination that they themselves innately or by training prefer. And criticism, in a country that has produced so great a drama and possesses the works of William Shakespeare, tends to be far too dramatic. But drama is naturally hostile to fantasy. Fantasy, even of the simplest kind, hardly ever succeeds in drama. When that is presented, as it should be, visibly and audibly acted. Fantastic forms are not to be counterfeited. Men dressed up as talking animals may achieve buffoonery or mimicry, but they do not achieve fantasy. This is, I think, well illustrated by the failure of the bastard form pantomime. The nearer it is to dramatized fairy story, the worse it is. It is only tolerable when the plot and its fantasy are reduced to a mere vestigiary framework for farce, and no belief of any kind in any part of the performance is required or expected of anybody. This is, of course, partly due to the fact that the producers of drama have to or try to work with mechanism to represent either fantasy or magic. I once saw a so-called children's pantomime, The Straight Story of Puss in Boots, with even the metamorphosis of the ogre into a mouse. Had this been mechanically successful, it would have either terrified the spectators or else have been just a turn of high-class conjuring. As it was, though, done with some ingenuity of lighting, disbelief had not so much to be suspended as hung, drawn, and quartered.
Mm.
In Macbeth, I think we're way behind from where we left off.
Okay, okay.
Because he's going to talk about Macbeth here again.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually don't mind doing this again because I'm kind of getting a better idea
Mm-hmm.
of what he's getting at.
Yeah.
So this is what clued me in. In human art, fantasy is a thing best left to words, to true literature. And then he goes on to say that in painting, the visible presentation of the fantastic image is technically too easy. I right away I thought of AI art,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because there's nothing so nauseating as looking at an AI fantasy image.
Yeah.
And there's lots of them because people are, I don't know, they're trying to make those dreams come true or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, I've never made an image on AI, but I'm just imagining that it's probably easy for it to do.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
What feels off when you see a fantasy image? Like, maybe I shouldn't even say fantasy, like a dreamlike image created by AI.
Well, I haven't spent much time looking at them because whenever I see an AI image, I just, I don't even want to give it the time of day. But I think, and I'm just making a wild guess, I think what bothers me about it is there's no flaws in it. It's
Yeah.
too perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's mathematically made.
Yeah, it's just too perfect. It's too much symmetry, you know, all that kind of thing. I haven't really given it a whole lot of thought. What do you think?
Well, I think it relates to what he says because if you are a computer,
Yeah.
so to say, you're good. The only thing you're good at is calculating, and you calculate all the ratios
Mm,
of faces and people, and uh, your output is perfect in that way,
right.
and it's easy to produce. However, if you take a real story or like a human life, like I look at my own life, gosh, it's just uh, there's so many things that cannot be calculated or predicted, or it's chaotic.
Hmm.
And I think whatever story we take, there's this element. If it's human story, if it's a human generated story,
Yeah.
there's this chaos there, uh, of unpredictability and unknowability, and something happens that nobody thought would even like even conceive of that might happen. And uh, and any form of human art that I can think of contains this chaos.
Yeah.
uh, and I believe it goes back to even so the Silmarillion, kind of the way the first chapters open, and like there's this music of Iluvatar,
Hmm.
and there are tons of Valar, those I know the forces that's perform this music of
Yeah.
Iluvatar, and and they have to align, they have to harmonize with each other,
Yeah.
so they kind of kind of rub off of each other, and they try to harmonize to create this beauty in the world. And yet Melkor falls away from the music, and and then when Iluvatar is asked, "What are you going to do with this chaos that he's bringing in?" Somehow Iluvatar says, "No, no, no. We're not going to destroy this guy.
Yeah.
We're not gonna just say, okay, whatever chaos he produces has to be like torn out of the picture and just forgotten,
Yeah.
annihilated. We will take this chaos and we will weave it into the whole, and it will augment the tapestry of the whole."
Yeah.
But the thing is that Tolkien says that even the Ainur cannot see into these things. They cannot understand
Right.
how it is even possible,
Yeah.
and they yearn to look into these things, and they don't know.
I'm just thinking of Rilke's poem, one of his Duino elegies, where he says, "Don't tell the angel about unsayable things or ineffable things.
Hmm.
Talk to him about what it was like to watch the rope maker by the Nile." I'm hearing that differently now, um, because I mean, first of all, that would be super primitive. Rope maker by the Nile. Like, you just think about that. There's got to be like a very primitive art. And it would be working with a natural. I'm a fiber person, right? Because I'm a spinner. And it would be working with the natural fiber and the what do you call that? The qualities of that material will dictate how you make the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the qualities of wool, it dictates how I make the wool into
Yeah.
yarn.
Yeah.
I don't have much say in it, right? So there's this feeling of a muse. And I think I'm not a painter or a drawer or anyone, anything like that. Or, I mean, I write, but I do know what I'm writing, that I often have a feeling afterwards that this thing was birthed out of me. It did, like, I didn't, it's its own thing. I didn't make it with ones and zeros. I didn't, make up the ratio, as you said, and decide how it has to be. It comes out, and it feels like it has a power of its own, or a being of its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think that this is the reason why he doesn't like drama, because it's too engineered.
Yeah.
Somebody has to make a costume and decide what the character is going to look like. Somebody has to paint the set, right? And decide how the setting is from, Puss in Boots, right? Which he doesn't think is a fairy tale to begin with. But
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if I can express it the way I want to, but it's not like you can't use your imagination when you're doing drama. People do it all the time, but it's too calculated, like you said, mathematical in a sense, for Tolkien.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For Tolkien, whereas literature doesn't have that quality when someone's writing it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in some ways, I think Peter Jackson had to go to the drama side of the Lord of the Rings when he made the movies,
Yeah.
because there is drama present there. However, if you read the books, there are stretches of the story where there's no drama.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I mean, if you read like books like Fantastis, there are dramatic moments there, but for a lot
There's
of
a lot of
people,
quietness, a lot of
there's
quiet moments.
a little quiet moments, just like in real life. I mean,
Yeah.
and that is certainly not engineered. I mean, you cannot engineer these things.
Right. And it's also maybe a little bit hyperbolic, if that's a good way to describe it. Drama, because you got to you have to have all these crescendos, right, to keep
Yeah.
the interest of the audience, because they're not using their imaginations, they're letting you paint the picture
Mm-hmm.
in their minds, right? So it has to stay interesting. I don't know, I'm just wild guessing here, but I think that it makes more sense to me why he doesn't like
Yeah.
drama.
I think I read somewhere in Aristotle that he believed that spectacle or drama was the lowest form of art.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Maybe he's riffing on Aristotle then.
Maybe.
I don't know much about Aristotle.
Uh-huh. Well, neither do I. I just read a little bit here, a little bit
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
But that's definitely interesting.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So in Macbeth, and I'm sorry if anybody's already heard us read this part. I just realized we're probably way behind from where we left off, but I think I want to just do it again. In Macbeth, when it is read, I find the witches tolerable. They have a narrative function and some hint of dark significance, though they are vulgarized, poor things of their kind. They are almost intolerable in the play. Oh, okay, wait. In Macbeth, when it is read, he finds them tolerable, but in the play, they are almost intolerable. They would be quite intolerable if I were not fortified by some memory of them as they are in the story as read. I am told that I should feel differently if I had the mind of the period, with its witch hunts and witch trials, but that is to say, if I regarded the witches as possible, indeed likely, in the primary world. In other words, if they cease to be fantasy. That argument concedes the point. Okay, so, wow. What do you think he's saying there?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think what I get out of it is that oh, when Shakespeare wrote it, uh, I mean, the witches were internally consistent. you know,
Yeah,
they, they had some weight, some hint of dark significance, right? But when you put it in the play and make it dramatic, it takes something away from it, and
right.
maybe it has nothing to do with anything. But uh, when I tried to watch quite a few Shakespearean plays in Russia
Mhm.
growing up, and I don't like them the way they turn out. I just don't like them,
Mhm.
and I still don't know why. Because I've always enjoyed reading
Right.
Shakespeare, and I haven't read a lot, but I mean, still, I mean,
Yep.
there's only one uh, movie based on Shakespeare that I love, and it's on the uh, Venetian Merchant. It's really well made.
Merchant of Venice.
Sorry, it's a Merchant.
Well, same thing.
Translating it from Russian.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, and but the other things, they just don't uh, seem credible. That's the thing, somehow. To me, I know a lot of people like them, but I don't know.
But I mean, don't you find that a little bit sad? Because Shakespeare was a playwright.
Yeah, he
He was
was.
writing for drama.
Yes, yeah,
He wasn't writing novels, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the cool thing about Shakespeare, and I did a little course with Michael Martin, and we did 9 plays. And the cool thing about him is that he appealed to it was like The Simpsons. Kids and adults could watch The Simpsons and get the different layers of humor in The Simpsons.
Mhm.
And with Shakespeare, he could make political statements that were tamped down by the fact that it was a drama. He could appeal to adults in the audience, and he could appeal to upper class people, educated people, and uneducated people, and lower class people, right? He had jokes for everybody in his plays, and or little nudges or digs or whatever, that all these different levels of society would understand.
Mhm.
So for me, Shakespeare was always about participating in his plays. Like you were part of it because of the things he was talking about, you know? Like he would nod to the lower class people. He would nod to the nobles. He would nod to the kings and the queens in the plays, right? And oftentimes his narrators would speak directly to the audience, or some of his characters would look
Yeah.
at the audience and speak to them.
Mhm.
So there was a real participation in Shakespeare's plays that maybe on screen you lose, right? You're not in the room. Maybe it's different in the room. But one of the things I think he's trying to say here, um, he says, so he liked reading about the witches. He found them tolerable when he read the play. But when he saw the play, they were almost intolerable. And
Mhm.
he said they would be quite intolerable. So absolutely, like he would have walked out, I guess, if he didn't have a memory of what he had read, right? But then he says, but then I'm told that I should feel differently if I had the mind of the period, with its witch hunts and witch trials. And that is to say, if I regarded the witches as possible. And then he says that argument concedes my point, because his point is fantasy. So none of this should be possible, right? It's not about primary world. It's about the imagination. I just saw this for the first time. Because last time I read this, I was like, what? You didn't like Macbeth?
Yep. I see.
Yeah. You get what I'm saying? Excuse me. Okay. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Macbeth is indeed... Oh, here he says it. Wait, let's start here. To be dissolved or to be degraded is the likely fate of fantasy when a dramatist tries to use it, even such a dramatist as Shakespeare.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Macbeth is indeed a work by a playwright who ought, at least on this occasion, to have written a story if he had had the skill or patience for that art. So he's saying, yeah, no, he shouldn't have turned it into a play, right?
Okay, yeah.
A reason...
Basically, for witches to be real, they have to be part of the fantasy world.
Exactly.
We should not kind of bring them into our primary world through,
right,
play, and make them, too obvious, like, use some sort of machinery or lights to show how they transmogrify somebody or whatever.
Right. And now I'm just thinking about how, like, he loved the old Nordic sagas. Tolkien did. He loved Nordic sagas, and they were not plays, even though they were, in a sense, like they were a journey, like the Odyssey, let's say, or whatever, of some guy's travels, like Beowulf, right? But they were stories that were told. They weren't acted out on a stage. And it seems to me that he's favoring the bardic telling of story over the dramatization of story on a stage.
Yeah,
but then maybe Shakespeare, who said all the world's a stage, is being a little ironic by being a playwright.
Yeah.
So, okay. A reason more important, I think, than the inadequacy of stage effects is this: drama has, of its very nature, already attempted a kind of bogus, or shall I say at least substitute, magic. The visible and audible presentation of imaginary men in a story. This is their substitute magic. That is in itself an attempt to counterfeit the magician's wand. To introduce, even with mechanical success, into this quasi-magical secondary world a further fantasy or magic is to demand, as it were, an inner or tertiary world. It is a world too much. He's a purist, really, right? Don't you think?
He's a what?
A purist. Like a purist. Like he's just being, very true to fantasy or the fantastic or the imagination. Like, so I've never had the sense that he's criticizing drama in the sense that he thinks it should never exist.
Sure.
But he's comparing it to what exists in, what he would call back here, the inner consistency of reality. Because for him, the imagination is that thing that reveals that inner consistency of reality, right? Yeah. So I don't think that this is like Tolkien, dropping the hammer on Shakespeare. This is Tolkien putting it into the context of what he thinks fantasy, and he's defending it as fantasy because that's what he wrote. It is describing It's describing the inner consistency of reality. And that he doesn't believe can be put on the stage.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's the reason Peter Jackson didn't excluded Tom Bombadil uh,
Maybe?
from because he didn't find enough drama in that. Well, even though I mean,
Or he didn't want to ruin Tom Bombadil,
maybe.
you know? I'm
Uh,
sure he must have read this on fairy stories.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, if he got to this part, he was probably shaking in his boots.
Well, what's interesting to me is how drama. I mean, maybe if I'm allowed to say that, we can differentiate between cheap drama
Yep.
or spectacle and true, maybe true drama. Because, for example, seeing a flower in a certain light is very dramatic, but it requires a very particular, way of perception to perceive that drama. Uh, it's like it's not at the surface. Like if you are writing a play or staging a play, you have to make everything so obvious to the audience that so that all the elements will be accessible and understandable and graspable. Whereas, for example, maybe I'll share that. I just read like a little biography by a Russian academician. Actually, his name is Sergei Averintsev. I don't know if you've come
No.
across, but he was, oh my goodness. So uh, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, uh, he was a philologist and a translator.
Mm.
And but he, I don't know where to start. Anyway, uh, so he wrote an encyclopedia by
Wow.
himself, basically. He was so, I mean, his knowledge was so broad.
Right.
But he was able to weave subtle sermons because he was an Orthodox. He
Right.
was able to weave, and he was a disciple of another scholar, Russian scholar. His name is Losiev. I don't know if you've heard about him.
No.
So anyway, and he was able to weave. Even to this day, if you read some of his articles in that particular encyclopedia, you can perceive drama in something that is written in an academic style
Wow.
because he needed to write it like that. Otherwise, it wouldn't have passed the censorship
Mm-hmm.
in the Soviet Union. And but so he did it with so much love and so much skill that when you read it, you feel the drama of it.
Right.
And the most dramatic thing is that he was given this. It's called what was it called in the Soviet times? It was called like a prize, grand prize, like a huge sum, well, big sum of money,
Yeah.
uh, by for his book on this ancient Greek uh, philosopher Plutarchus,
Yeah.
Plutarch, and ironically, this particular prize, he got this prize from the Lenin Komsomol, organization. It's basically like the branch of the Communist Party.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, who can't see the drama in this? It wasn't
Right.
dramatic at all, but him, like a really humble person, he was able to create such a thing of beauty and weave it into this bulky and unwieldy. Uh,
Encyclopedia.
it's like encyclopedia, yes.
Yeah.
And he he got the acknowledgement of the basically of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union,
Wow.
and it's like,
So,
yes,
so he almost hid the beauty in it
Yeah,
for those who have eyes to see.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
cool.
cannot avoid seeing this drama if you are on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We had in the Florent, just this is an aside, not really talking about Tolkien now, but you just reminded me of it. We had an Eastern European lady who was a linguist in the class on Florensky. She was an older woman, and I think she was Polish, but I'm not sure. And she had such an interesting take on Florensky and what he was saying when he said certain things that were potentially offensive to other people in the class. They were never offensive to me because I just would automatically give him the benefit of the doubt because I didn't think he was a sardonic or mean person, you know. But she said something interesting because she said that he was writing as a Russian man. And a Russian man is not like a North American man. And it had to do with this how did you put it about this guy, this drama, like there's a Russian soul, she was explaining, right, that is fiery and full of emotion. That's how she described it. And she's not Russian. Like she reads, she can speak Russian.
Yeah.
And she was kind of frustrated at some people's takes on what Florensky was saying because she was like, no, he's not a North American man. He's a Russian man. So that's kind of interesting because it seems like the drama might be built in, Eugene.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I
just
think I
like,
get what she means. I think I understand what she means, but yeah.
well, I think for her, at least from her, she's a linguist, right? So she really understood language. Like she knew Indo-European and Eastern languages, Slavic languages, Russian, you know. And she there's a fire built into the Russian heart. Like she said, Russian people speak from their heart,
Yeah.
not from their head.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, I was listening to this lady who is well, anyway, she's like a poet and a philosopher, Olga Sedakova, and she's like a specialist in Dante. Really, really interesting lady. Uh, Gosh, why did I start to talk about her?
Well, we were talking about Russian
Oh, oh yeah,
drama.
yeah. She said, she said, how do you read Heidegger as a Russian?
Mm,
He said, well, by the way, there's lots of similarities in the German way of thinking and Russian way of thinking
yeah,
in many ways. But she said, you cannot understand a line in Heidegger unless you are in the poetic state of mind.
right.
So, uh, and you will understand almost anything the moment you are in the poetic state of mind.
Hmm.
And the way she put it, I think I kind of can expand it a little bit and just say that um, that you have to be to understand Florensky, I guess, yeah, fully. Uh, I mean, you can sort of understand it through the Western lens by like breaking down what he means
Yeah,
into words and sentences.
yeah,
But the overall, you just have to. It's so almost like you have to start from chapter one, and then allow the full weight of his images to strike you,
yeah,
and then everything else kind of it puts you in a certain frame of mind,
yeah.
and then everything else kind of flows. Comes naturally after that. Um, and that's what I felt when I read my first book by Berdyaev, because it was difficult. I mean, it was difficult to grasp. And then I realized, oh my goodness, that's how he is structuring his arguments. Basically, he gives you this grand image from the get go.
Yeah.
He wants you to feel what he feels,
Right. Yes,
and then
exactly.
and then you will get every following
Right.
subsequent.
Well, I'm finding this is not about Tolkien, but I'm finding this really fascinating, Eugene, because I think that you're a translator,
Mhm.
right? And if you want to translate somebody's work faithfully, like faithfully to the spirit in which it was written, you have to be able to empathically resonate with them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like just writing down words, equivalent concepts, that's not going to cut it. Like I've got some translations of Rilke here that were in these Oxford, from the 50s, Oxford University books. So he's got the German and then the English translation by some guy. I don't know who it is. Horrible. Just like,
yeah.
it's so, like, because I don't speak German, but I can read it, but I speak a low German dialect. And when you learn another language, you actually start to look through the eyes of that culture at the world. Don't you think that's true?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
So you can inhabit two worlds. Like if you're speaking Russian, you're looking at the world as a Russian. When you speak English, you're looking at the world through the eyes of a English speaking person.
Yeah, very true.
And so when I lived in Switzerland and I spoke German for 11 years, Swiss German, when I'm reading Rilke, I'm reading him through the eyes of a German speaking person.
Yeah,
And I'm getting way more from his poetry than what I'm seeing on the English side of the page.
exactly. Yeah,
It's kind of frustrating. And we always say lost in translation, right?
yeah.
But as a
But
translator,
can I
there,
can I interrupt you because I'm gonna forget.
yeah, yeah, go for it.
I think I've just read somewhere that when uh, the first translation of the book of Genesis was made from the original Hebrew into Greek. I forgot the name of the guy. Um, Saint Jerome, right? He
Oh
was
yeah.
he included an introduction there, and he said basically that you cannot understand a line of Genesis unless you are in the poetic state of mind.
There
Basically,
you
that
go.
it is poetry, and it is written in verse.
Yeah.
And to be, I mean, to even attempt to understand it in any other way is just futile.
Yeah, and I think that the poetic state of mind is an incarnational way of being in the world where you inhabit, like the poet inhabits the subject of his poem.
Hmm.
And he speaks as, what's the famous one by Rilke about Apollo, you know? I
Hmm.
don't it doesn't, like, I can't quote it, but you know, you have a poet who is speaking who has the voice of the sun, let's say, or the voice of the only way you can do that is to literally become the thing, right? You inhabit it. And
Yeah,
I think that this is what I mean, I don't think this is what I call empathic resonance with the object, right?
yeah,
Which is like Rilke has a whole what they call the scholars call his thing poems, and they're capital T, because I think that's what he's doing is he's discovering that way of inhabiting the thing so he can see the world through the thing,
hmm,
because that's the only way you can get that other perspective like Tolkien is talking about, right? And this is all an operation of divine imagination, because I'm getting really excited now because this is like my favorite subject. Because it's incarnational. You have to inhabit. So let me give you an example. I wrote a poem years ago. It's really, really short. And it talks about, it's exactly this. And it came to my mind when you were talking about George MacDonald and flowers and fairies.
Mhm.
This is called Yellow Flowers. They block my path on the way to the outhouse. Each head bobs precariously on bowed backs, smiling, bright, and eternally optimistic. I don't know their names, but they are everywhere. These stretch ever more tenuously across my path, asking to be seen. But what is my eye to them? Must it fall like the sun across their faces? A less glorious but still luminous orb? It seems to be so.
Mhm.
Right? So these flowers were, and this was like a real life experience. And I had this moment, and I just wrote this all down at once because they were in my way. Every time I went to the outhouse, I had to get around them, and they were kind of hanging. So they went like this, and then their heads popped up because they were facing the sun, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And every time I went to the outhouse, they were a little, because they were growing, they were a little further in my way, a little further in my way. And I was going to rip them out. Then I'm like, oh no, they're asking to be seen. There's,
Oh,
right? So, like, I had to inhabit them in order to understand the principle.
mhm.
And so at that bottom, I made myself a note at the bottom of this. Observers are necessary for the universe to be born. That is the participative anthropic principle,
It is. It is.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I experienced it with these flowers. And the reason it's so striking to me is because I literally have to inhabit them
Yeah.
in order to see the world from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that is incarnation. It's even a flower, right? A carnation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a carnation flower.
I know.
So if you are incarnation, you are incarnational.
But do you get what I'm saying? I'm using biblical terms on purpose
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because I think that there's a principle here that gets overlooked. You know, most people think about the incarnation as this one time, the nativity. Jesus, you know, God became man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, St. Athanasius says God became man so that man can become God,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
It's reciprocal. And if that's the case, then it's an ongoing thing. It's happening. And I think it happens in poetry.
Yep.
That's where it happens. And that's why Genesis is poetic. It's
Mm-hmm.
also where Heidegger, you know, why he's poetic. And I mean, as far as I know, I don't know a whole lot about Heidegger, but I do know that he was very influenced by Meister Eckhart.
Yeah. He was. He was.
Eckhart was, you know, the master of riddles, right? And when it came to being, like what being is, and I think Heidegger was just trying to dissect it,
Yep.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, Meister Eckhart is saying the same thing better than I could, but saying what I'm saying is that you have to empathically resonate like that. He's got, okay, here's a we're totally off topic here, but I don't think so, because this is what the divine imagination accomplishes. And this is why Tolkien thinks it's primary. It's actually the it's actually what reality consists of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I'm just going to read you a thing from my Meister Eckhart. Where is it? When I was the stream, when I was the forest, when I was still the field, when I was every hoof, foot, fin, and wing, when I was the sky itself, no one ever asked me, did I have a purpose? No one ever wondered, was there anything I might need? For there was nothing I could not love. It was when I left all we once were that the agony began, The fear and questions came, and I wept, and tears I had never known before. So I returned to the river, I returned to the mountains. I asked for their hand in marriage again. I begged to wed every object and creature. And when they accepted, God was ever present in my arms. And he did not say, "Where have you been?" For then I knew my soul, every soul, had always held him.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it makes me speechless.
I know.
Uh-huh.
And he asks for their hand in marriage again.
Yeah.
That's two things becoming one flesh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. So, and not to stray from Tolkien here, because I think we're actually helping out his argument a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That this is what fantasy, in his opinion, not fancy as as the lost imagination, the one where George MacDonald says, if she cannot go out to worship, she will stay home to be sensual.
Mm-hmm.
That's what George MacDonald says about the imagination. And when that happens, he calls it fancy. So divine imagination goes out to worship,
Mm-hmm.
which is what Meister Eckhart just did there with the forest, right? He goes out to worship. If she can't go out to worship, she will stay home to be sensual, what do you call it? Absorbed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I really like his opening line. When I was the river.
Yeah.
I think it's just a powerful chord, musically speaking, because that in itself kind of creates the frame of mind. Um, when I was the river.
Yep.
Um,
It's not, and there's no question.
yeah.
It's not like when I thought I was the river,
No.
or when I felt like I was a river. It's when I was the river, right? And there's a beautiful poem. A lot of people are familiar with it. I'm just going to see if I can find it. It's in here. I think it's right in the beginning. Sorry, just. Well, this is the deer. This is part of the Deer's Cry, the St. Patrick's breastplate.
Oh, I love that one.
I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of sun, radiance of moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of wind, depth of sea, stability of earth, firmness of rock. And then there's another one by American, and I'm just see if I can find it here quickly. It's supposed to be one of the earliest Celtic writings, and I'm not finding it. But anyways, it's very similar to what Meister Eckhart writes there about, it's this chieftain who arrives in Ireland, and he basically just states that he is everything. He is the sea. He is the mountains. I am the this. I am the that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way of being in the world that we've lost because of rationality. We don't think poetically anymore. We don't see ourselves as the mountain.
Yeah.
Right? Or as the sea. But people who thought poetically did. They just did. That's how and that's why this is just so fascinating to me, Eugene, because it's well, for one thing, it's metaphor. Right? I am The forest. When I was the forest. It's a, and in our modern understanding, a metaphor is just a fantasy.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's describing, as Tolkien says in here, it's actually describing, I'll just read his words, the inner consistency of reality.
Mm-hmm. Can I share a short story here?
Yeah, sorry, I've been just.
You were talking about, and it's really speaks to me. I just finished translating subtitles for a documentary about a Russian lady who climbed Everest this year, or maybe last year. Anyway, so she loved mountaineering since she was a little girl, and then finally she decided, I've done enough 7,000ers, and I want to go to it's meters. So Everest is it's 8,480 or something meters. So she decided to go up there, and on the way back she got this pneumonia, and she was struggling to breathe for like a day. She really couldn't take a breath there, even though she had a mask and things like that. And while she was struggling with her breathing, she forgot about her hands, even though she had gloves and all kinds of equipment. But she got frostbite on several of her fingers. I forgot how many. And when she finally came down successfully, they had to amputate them.
Oh.
And she got better. Everything is fine. But so this interviewer, the guy who's taking her interview, he says, so you probably are not going to go mountaineering for the rest of your life. And she says, oh, no. Ever since I've done that climb, I've been back, not to that particular height, lower, but I just need to go. And he asks, why? She says, different people get energized and get a lot enlivened by different things.
Right.
I get enlivened by mountains.
Right.
When I'm on the mountain, I am myself. And she said that. I was trying my best to translate it
right.
in English as best I could. But when I'm on the mountain, I am the mountain. And
there you go.
The mountain is me. And she basically, it was a powerful chord. The way she was talking about a lot of suffering she's gone through, and kinds of PTSD and all kinds of things. But at the same time, she was so happy at the end, especially at the end. And she said, I've tried to do everything, even with like three fingers on this arm, 3 fingers on this arm, and I can do it all. I can, the ropes and the clips and all kinds of things. I'm so happy I can go back.
Wow. Amazing.
Yes.
But that's really interesting, don't you think, that is where people feel the most human? Really, when she says the most alive, I would say that's like the most human. Like, you really feel, when you say I feel like myself, you're not saying I feel like I'm all the ideas I have about myself. You feel like the most human you could possibly feel, and it somehow involves a marriage between two things in order to feel that way, which is true about marriage. And yet, the closer, and I'm just going to make a psychological guess, the closer you get to that feeling, the less you know about who you are. It's a mystery that maybe is the reason she has to keep going back.
Yeah.
Right? Super interesting. Yeah. I'm going to have to talk to you one day about my theories about metaphor. I actually would like to like just privately have a conversation with you about that, because I have to try to formulate it into, I have to write something about it. And so I have to just keep talking about it, but I don't, I don't
Yeah.
really want to talk about it out. I've talked about it a little bit, but I don't want to, throw it all out there right now.
Yeah.
So,
I love metaphors, and I've written a few articles about metaphor as well.
mhm.
So
Oh, that would be cool. Then I'll have to send you an email. We'll figure something out.
yeah, totally. I'd love to.
Well, we've been going for an hour and 15. You want to call it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a,
Okay,
and
good.
we haven't covered a lot, but I think we've
No,
covered
well, I think we did actually.
quite a
I
bit.
think it was a fun little aside, because I do think it relates to the imagination, which is like Tolkien says in that first bit that we read. He says here, the mental power of image making is one thing, and it should appropriately be called imagination, with a capital I. The perception of the image, the grasp of its implications, which is like, so this, think of my Yellow Flowers poem. The perception of the image, the grasp of its implications, and the control which are necessary to a successful expression may vary in vividness and strength, but this is a difference of degree in imagination, right? Not a difference in kind. And I would just say, like, it doesn't mean that I have a different imagination than somebody else. Like, my imagination is like this big, and Meister Eckhart's is like that big. Let's
Mhm.
put my hands out of the screen, right? It's like, so it's a difference in degree of how much you've cultivated it, because according to McDonald, you have to cultivate your imagination. You're not just gifted with it and then you work with what you got. No, you got to actually cultivate it.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Wow. I'm
yeah.
almost ready to talk about like 7 or 8 more hours, but I think
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good time to go. All right. Well,
But
thanks.
yeah, I like to end conversations on such a note where it could continue for another 10 hours.
Mhm. Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah,
So we'll shoot again for next week. You want to try again next week at
yeah,
this time?
it's a good time for me. Yeah,
Okay, good. Good. Then for those that are watching, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we see you next week around the same time.
bye,
Bye-bye.
bye.